So, Drake and Doc, I want to get your thoughts. There's been a lot going on in the news lately, and actually about a few months ago, talking about the Marvel stars and how Marvel movies aren't real movies, and there's just popcorn and it's just filler and all this stuff. And I just wanted to, I put together some clips. I wanted you to watch this about 4.5 minutes, and then I want to get your thoughts.
Part of the Marvelization of Hollywood is, it's the, you have all these actors who have become famous playing these parts, characters, but they're not movie stars.
Right.
Captain America is the star.
Right.
Thor is the star. I mean, I'm not the first person to say that. I think that's been said a zillion times. But it's like, it's these franchise characters that become a star. If an actor stars in a movie that does as good as the Marvel movies do, well, that guy's a new star.
Sure.
They're an absolute star. And that means that people dig him or her.
Yeah.
And they like them and they want to see them and stuff. And then they, Sandra Bullock is in Speed.
Right.
All right. And everyone thought she was amazing in it. All right. She was charming as hell. Everyone fell in love with her. And so, even she does a couple of mediocre movies after that, The Net and something else. Okay. Well, people went to see it because they were
like
excited by Sandra Bullock. They want to see her in something else. And she's good in those movies.
Yeah.
But that's not the case now.
Yeah.
The value? How do you say the value of a film that's like a theme park film, for example, the Marvel type pictures, where the theaters become amusement parks? That's a different experience, and it's not even. I was saying earlier, it's not cinema; it's something else.
When Scorsese came out and he said, "I don't think these superhero movies are cinema." Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know where you stand with that. I'm curious. I kind of felt like, that's kind of an elitist attitude. I mean, Scorsese's certainly one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. I worship the guy's movies, but I mean, it is cinema. I mean, is it not?
Well, okay. Again, it's like he's an old man. You think Scorsese's going to be into Ant-Man versus the Wasp?
Why not?
But he's not going to be, all right? I don't think he would have been that into that at 37. Forget about however fucking old he is now. All right? That's just not his thing. I mean, even me when it comes to, I used to collect Marvel comic books. I loved Marvel comic books. And, if all this shit was coming out in 86, I would be all down with it. They waited till I got too old.
According to Scorsese, it's not cinema. I got to take a look at that,
Well, why did he say that?
Because it's his opinion.
But it is cinema, isn't it?
I mean, it plays in theaters.
Yeah, well, what did he mean by that it's not cinema?
I appreciate his opinion because I think it's like anything. We need all of the different perspectives so we can come to center and move on. You're therapy.
No, come on.
You're therapized.
No, you're being too nice
magnanimous.
About this.
It's called.
No, really. Were you insulted when he said that it's not cinema? That somehow Iron Man isn't cinema? It is cinema to me.
Well, I mean, look. It'd be like saying Howard Stern isn't radio. It is. It makes no sense.
But what was
he
trying? Was he jealous of the success?
Of course not. But I mean, he's Martin Scorsese.
Then what does he mean by it?
I think in his view, and by the way, there's a lot to be said for how these genre movies, and I was happy to be part of the problem if there is one.
Right.
Were denigrated the art form of cinema. And by the way, when you come in like a stomping beast and you eliminate the competition in such a demonstrative way, it's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal. And maybe he's upset about you know what it is? You get older, you're used to cinema being a certain way.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Do you actually think Martin Scorsese is upset about Marvel movies?
Yes. Yes, I do. Okay. Because he's the guy who's busy archiving films. I don't know. It's kind of a knock. I mean, the fact is, were you ever nominated for an Academy Award for Iron Man?
No.
Don't you think that's, and be serious.
Yeah.
Because it's a superhero movie, they turn their nose at the performance is excellent.
It's an interesting, I think it's an interesting topic for discussion because there's a couple different sides to it. You take the side of art. And I think you can take some of these things, and you can't deny that they aren't art. I think for certain people, it's similar to the way if you learn to play guitar and then you see somebody and you play guitar and you have to do all these years to learn how to play it and learn the art and all the tricks and all the ways to do it, to write a song. And then you see somebody now that can just get on a computer and loop a part that they download and write a song. And to you, and it's different. And to you, a person might take that and be like, well, that's not, he's not a musician. Like that's not music. That's just a loop, right? And so it's similar to, I think it's more of like a kind of coming from this time of having to put all in this work to do all these things. And you see these things that already have a following because there's already IP there, as we talked about. There's already a following for the idea of Captain America, and so these people come in and they write the story, and from his point of view, it doesn't really take that much to go anywhere with that. But I mean, as we see now, that's not necessarily true because the fandom can be very, very, very critical on what they see and what they like, and it doesn't just because it has the name of a certain character slapped on there doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to enjoy the movie. And I think that if you take some of the story, because I think that's not they're coming from an emotional he's coming from an emotional position, specifically Martin Scorsese. And if you take it back to the idea of the skill of actors, the skill of writing, just the idea of stories, and you look at some of these movies, they're great stories. It's just a great story. And then you take the skill of the actors, right? You can see their skill in the way what they're portraying. It's not like anyone can just go in there and there's emotion, there's art there. The same like in some of these in the animated movies we're talking about Into the Spider-Verse. It's all animated, but that's clearly one should have a value for the skill it took and the artistic way they're telling the story and the way they're using visuals to tell the story and to show the differences in these universes with the way they look and the color and the artistic style. And I think it's the same way with a lot of superhero movies. Obviously, there are a ton of superhero movies that aren't, that I understand. There's a ton that people could point out and go, well, that's not cinema because it's hokey and it's whatever. And I think those stand on their own. But I think to condemn the entirety of it is a little ridiculous when you consider some of the stuff that's been released and made.
If you consider like some of the films that Howard Hughes made in the early days of cinema, when there was a guy walking on an airplane, and the edit, it's got these jump edits, and there's like, even some of the stuff that who's the guy with the mustache?
Groucho Marx.
Groucho Marx. His not Marx. It was the other one. Oh God, my memory is Swiss cheese.
Abbott and Costello? No,
that's a duo. I know Abbott and Costello. Anyway, you see some of these other films. The guy with the cane.
Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, some of the Chaplin films. Now, those are highly regarded, but some of the earlier films are also highly regarded. So when you see someone, he's got four guys and they're playing four chords, and oh my, it's not classical music. It's not. I mean, what do you...
So we had a conversation after watching this video. The Scorsese comments I find less interesting because it's the way Robert Downey Jr. explained where that was coming from. The comments to me that were more interesting are the Tarantino part of that video clip you just played us, and the clip where he's talking about, and it goes to the conversation we were having earlier, where I was saying that, the general public has accepted 3 different Peter Parkers on film. And like Doc has mentioned, Chris Evans is eventually going to be too old to be Captain America. They're going to have to change the actor. If they want to do new movies, Star Wars decides to do this Luke thing they want to do, they're going to recast Luke. It's not going to be Mark Hamill. It's just too old. So, but Tarantino made a really interesting, and we talked about this, about the fact that the actors playing the parts aren't the stars. It's the characters they're playing. The superheroes that have been around for 40, 50 years that are the stars. And it's funny because you look at the way that they've marketed everything. And it goes into, like, you could talk about some of the collectible side, toys and so forth. They're not based on what the original comic book character looked like. They're based on the actual human actor that's playing the character now.
I would actually tend to disagree with the statement there.
Go ahead.
And it really would depend on some of the characters and the superheroes you look at. On some of those, yes. Like if you take Spider-Man, like because he has a rabid following, not even rabid. He has a giant following, and so people value Spider-Man, and so you have someone who plays Spider-Man. But if you take a character like Iron Man, like he wasn't. Like Robert Downey Jr. changed Iron Man.
Oh, 100%.
Massively.
He did, 'cause nobody knew who Iron Man was.
So Robert Downey Jr. was the star. And he made Iron Man a star.
Indeed.
So it's like, what are you dealing with? And depending on what you're dealing with. And so it's like, there are other situations where it's like Hugh Jackman and Wolverine. Now, obviously, Wolverine was still huge, but a lot of people say they couldn't see someone else playing that character. And even though there are people out there doing fan, castings, when they found out that Hugh Jackman was coming back as Wolverine, nobody said that's a bad idea. I don't want to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. No, a lot of people said I can't see anybody else as Wolverine. So it would kind of say, well, that doesn't necessarily that Wolverine made Hugh Jackman. I would say there are some of these guys who have the skill, right? And there is that following there that jumpstarts it. But it's like same thing with Captain America. Not a lot of people are in Captain America.
Well, consider this: that when those early Raimi films came out, all the most of the fan base was people who grew up with Spider-Man like us, and we were waiting, like he was talking about. There was the thing was superhero movies are the death knell. If you do a superhero movie, it's going to be a bomb. So fast forward a few years later, then you have the X-Men come out. I mean, I knew a lot about Spider-Man. At least I thought I did. I didn't know anything about the X-Men, and I think most people didn't. He did, obviously, and people that he dealt with, but it's like, and so. It's sometimes the actor's portrayal, this great actor's portrayal of these characters alongside of the character of Captain. Because Chris Evans did a really great job. I just recently rewatched The First Avenger, and that is a great film. And you asked the other day which was our most preferred film, and man, it's a toss up because that is a great. I mean, for me, just growing up post World War II, having both of my grandfathers in World War II, it's just that movie just really hits home. And Chris Evans does a great job.
So I have a question, and this goes to the Tarantino part of your clip. In those Spider-Man movies, the Tobey Maguire ones, they were what they were. They were groundbreaking. But the X-Men movies that you call it, those movies, Patrick Stewart was already a star.
Yes.
Halle Berry was already a star. Ray Park had just done Darth Maul. He was a star.
Ray Park, who did he play?
He played the Toad in that original X-Men movie. So he had already been Darth Maul. He comes in this, and he plays the Toad from Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And you have all these.
I wouldn't say Ray Park was a star.
Well, he was somebody.
You had to be into Darth Maul and into Star Wars to be
But
into Ray Park.
But at that time, everybody knew who Ray Park was because of Darth Maul and Star Wars. The point is, now here this goes to Tarantino's point. Before Captain America and the Avengers and all these movies, with the exception of Robert Downey Jr., which of these other actors did you know? Did you know who Chris Hemsworth was? Did you know who Chris Evans was? I mean, I knew who Scarlett Johansson was because
but she's a great example.
Okay,
but
hold on.
But when you start going through all these other actors,
first, I'd like to say, Chris, before I address, because Captain America is a landmine you just stepped on. Before that, I think there's one side to say
those actors have done other movies.
When you look at the majority of cast, though, they're not super. None of them were super known, and that I think that there's a choice by the casting.
I agree.
People casting someone who's super. So like, of course they're not known because they weren't super known. They weren't in it very long. And I think that if you erase Disney and Marvel, I think that there's a large possibility that you still would have heard of some of these guys like Chris Hemsworth and all these guys.
Oh, yeah,
but
definitely.
Captain America is a perfect example because Captain America, like he's Captain America, so like there's the following of America, right? And he's an old character, an illustrious character, but realistically, Captain America wasn't cool until Chris Evans. Chris Evans made Captain America better. Like just same, not as drastically as Robert Downey Jr. did, but it's like Captain America was there and he's this long running character, but Captain America was wearing like these costumes with the flag on his head and all these things.
You're talking about
and this character made
stuff.
Captain America, and his acting, like he made Captain America cool, and he made Captain America relatable. And he made Captain America relatable, which, obviously, when you get to the story of Captain America, he should be relatable. But when you with the way he portrayed it, right? Most people hadn't read the Infinity Gauntlet to understand that, and the Infinity War and all those things, to understand that the scene where he's sitting against Thanos by himself is in the comic. But so they weren't aware of those things. But when you see the scene, and it harkens back to it harkens back. It's ancient word to the first Avenger and the entire motto of his life, and he's standing here one on one against this invincible enemy, and he's gonna stand
holding Mjolnir,
and he's gonna stand in a broken shield, and he's gonna stand because that's who he is, even when he wasn't a big muscle guy. And the way the actor portrayed this character,
oh yeah, Chris Evans
it's an
was
example
phenomenal.
that it isn't just a boilerplate thing. Right, it isn't just a boilerplate thing. He has points, and there's
yeah. I'm not taking away
merit to
from
some of
those
his points.
movies. In my opinion, all of what Marvel's done, in the sense of those Avengers movies, those two movies especially, when you get to Infinity Gauntlet and Endgame, changed cinema. I mean, you can't argue that you've like reset the bar on a whole new level.
This is one of the biggest movies ever.
Oh, easily.
And deservedly so.
They are.
Deservedly so. They are great films. I've been watching movies for since I was a kid, obviously, for 45 years. And those are great films. And anyone, really, it's like, so you made a couple mob films and they were interesting because no one had ever done a decent mob film before. But I'm sure there were people that said that he wasn't cinema.
So really it goes back to what is the purpose of cinema? What is the purpose? Because if the purpose is similar to like wine tasting and all of these things where it's supposed to be this, or it's supposed to be this one thing in this high level, and everybody has, if you can't get to understand that and get there, you don't get to be a part of it. Or is it supposed to be telling stories, an artistic way, a form, a medium of telling stories? And that's what it is. Yeah. And if that's what it is, then you have to say that these superhero movies, specifically some of these superhero movies in Marvel, are cinema, because these are ways of telling stories, and they're great stories.
I would agree. I'm not arguing that, and I wasn't trying.
No, I'm not saying that you are.
And my only point was that when they cast the movies, they cast them in a way that they got people to fill the roles. And growing up, I'd known who Robert Downey Jr. was forever. There was no way not to know who he was. And I would say that yes, Iron Man, that he is by far the superstar in the whole deal. There are others now that have elevated themselves with what they've done in these franchises, and I would argue that if they weren't stars when they started, they're definitely stars now. Yeah. But I do think that you could still recast certain characters if you really had to.
Yeah, you just have to do it right and do it thoughtfully.
No, I don't think that. I think that would be ridiculous to shut that idea down and be like, you can't recast these characters. But I do think that there's a consideration that there is whole generations at this point of people who have come to see Captain America as Chris Evans and to identify with Chris Evans as Captain America. And not that they wouldn't like accept that, but to put it in the way certain people that he was putting it kind of distills that connection that actor made with thousands, millions of people.
I agree.
People. And I think that's what it is to kind of say that these people were just kind of made by this character. Specifically, that like picking characters like Captain America and those who really were changed by the portrayal, I think is a fallacy.
See, when I had the idea to do this discussion because I thought the films were underrated and were taking a bad rap, some of the earlier ones. And so I put these clips together, and it kind of because I like a lot of what Tarantino said, and I like a lot of what Robert Downey Jr. said, and I just think that Scorsese, he is who he is. I don't want to trash the guy, but putting it all together, my thoughts kind of changed, and so I wanted to see what you guys thought, because I think that Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, and this I might have said it before, the arc from him, because I don't know who Iron Man is. It's a guy in a suit. I saw they had the little toy with the yellow legs. I'm like, okay, this guy's a goober. And so, agreed, Robert Downey Jr. made Iron Man. But to see his arc from a selfish jerk, genius, to someone who sacrifices himself, I mean, that is, to me, great storytelling.
And I think, in kind of a closing note, I think it's the same thing that we see in comics. Stan Lee made Spider-Man. but there are some amazing Spider-Man stories that weren't written by Stan Lee. And so like somebody could come in, someone who's born in the 60s or in the 50s and would say, well, if Stan Lee didn't write it, it's not a Spider-Man book, So these ideas, that what you have is someone creates a character. Because there's a lot of characters Stan Lee made, and a lot of the stories he wrote that were they weren't that great, and there's a lot of throwaway characters. But someone could come in and say, you could say, listen, this is a character someone made, right? But it's like everybody has their different identification and understanding of it, and that's what these things are. You take examples like Batman: The Long Halloween. We have, we talked about that before. You have a Superman writer comes in and connects with Frank Miller's writing of Batman, and then creates in his head a story, and writes the story and his view of this character and two or three of these characters and the creation of Two-Face and all of that. And it's like that's the same thing with what comic book movies are. You have these characters that have some great stories and some bad stories. And someone comes in, just like everyone else has been doing for 60, 50, however long, Spider-Man of these characters have been made. Someone else comes in with another view of that character, but it's a different medium. He's not just drawing it. He's using humans. He's using actors. He's using CGI, whatever it is. That's what I think it is, to kind of distill and try to make things to have to fit into one mold, to be something, especially in what is now such a wide medium as cinema. I just think that's incorrect. I think that's not a misunderstanding, but a misdeed.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. I just wanted to get to the heart.
I mean, that would
issue,
almost be, I think, misnomer,
maybe something like that.
Yeah, but
mistake. I think it's a mistake.
I would say that if you're the film, whether you think it's low budget or got billions of dollars behind it, it's art. It's an art form, and then just some people are at different levels of what they're doing with their art. But to say that it's not cinema just because this person didn't think that this is
some of it is. I
think that's an injustice to
right.
a lower level of people that are working on film.
Yeah,
and
I don't
art
want to say
that
lower.
are
I want to say
working
lower level.
not lower level in the sense of lower budget.
Right.
Lower budget. Some people you start at a certain point and you work your way up and you wait. Like a perfect example, Kevin Smith. That first movie he did, Clerks, he did it with a cell phone and a camcorder, and he spent like on credit cards like $10,000 or something
like that, yeah.
And made a movie that started a whole series of movies that he made a fortune off of. And I'm not saying that was a low deal, but it was an art. It was still art. It was still cinema, and it was some of the best dialogue in movies that you had seen in a long time. And it started a series of movies that, at least in the industry, are accepted.
This is something we should cover. Is I want to cover those He-Man shows that he made.
On another.
That's your homework. Watch
day.
the Kevin Smith He-Man episodes. But look, I just wanted to let's see if we can get to the heart of the issue. And so, if anyone out there has thoughts, maybe leave a comment and give us your perspective.